It's 1958. After a long day, Michael Corleone heads back to his room, finally believing he can end the night in peace. Kay notices the drapes are open, a small but unusual detail that makes her pause. And then, the compound erupts into chaos. Gunfire slices through the silence, guards shouting as they scramble to secure the estate. Michael moves instinctively, his mind racing, years of war and survival honing his every reaction. The corridors echo with frantic footsteps. But when the dust settles, the assassins are found dead before they can even escape. There's something much deeper going on. Fast forward a few days, far away in Miami. Hyman Roth sat in his modest Miami home, watched a baseball game on television, the flickering light reflecting off his aged, calculating eyes. The rhythm of the sport soothed him, reminding him of simpler times. The voice of the announcer filled the room, describing each play with a steady rhythm. Roth kept his gaze on the television. Outside, the sun glared off the pavement, but inside, the room was cool, shadowed, waiting, just as he had been for years. Roth is awaiting a visit from a very special guest, one that had been living in his mind for a while now. Michael Corleone was on his way. The main concern was the Havana deal, an opportunity unlike any other, a deal worth over $100 million, around $1.1 billion today, promising an empire built on casinos, political influence, and untouchable power. It was the ultimate expansion for the Corleone family, a path towards legitimacy, at least on the surface. A city on the brink of transformation, where business and politics intertwined in ways that only men like Hyman Roth and Michael Corleone could truly appreciate. The benefits were undeniable. With direct partnerships in Cuba, Michael and Roth were creating a new and improved Las Vegas, one where the law enforcement couldn't interfere. The Cuban government itself was backing the venture, investing $50 million, while the Teamsters Union provided the other half. A safe haven for organized crime backed by a government willing to look the other way. Casinos, hotels, and lucrative investments all protected under the watchful eye of Fulgencio Batista's regime. It was a future built on profits and connections, on power that stretched far beyond American borders. In short, an offer Michael could simply not refuse. But it was all a mirage, a masterful deception designed to lull Michael into a false sense of security before striking him down. A trap so intricate that Don Corleone himself, the son, the successor, the so-called genius, was oblivious to it. Roth had been waiting years for this. Roth had spent his life dealing with killers, gangsters, with men who thought they were untouchable. He had first tried to use bullets, striking in a tactically precise way, eliminating those who stood in his path. But Michael Corleone was different. He couldn't be reached with a single bullet or single attack. But this wasn't just any opponent, this was a Corleone. And if there was one thing life had taught Hyman Roth, it was that you don't take on a Corleone head-on. No, that would be a mistake. Ask Don Barzini. By now, Michael wasn't just the most powerful man in the underworld. His reach extended far beyond it, into politics, into business, into places Roth himself had spent a lifetime cultivating. An outright war against Michael Corleone? Roth was a veteran by now, he knew better. The first strike had been with bullets, tactically precise, calculated, aimed at eliminating Michael Corleone where he was strong, in the sanctuary of his own home. But Michael survived. That failure forced Roth to rethink his approach. Sun Tzu had taught the true path to victory. Avoid what is strong and strike at what is weak. The Lake Tahoe assassination attempt had been calculated, the timing exact, but Michael had survived. That failure forced Roth to rethink his strategy, to move from brute force to subtlety. He believed in patience, in the long game, and like all men who understood revenge, he subscribed to the old Sicilian maxim, revenge is a dish best served cold. So he waited once again. He found the right moment. He still had a much better weapon, a Corleone, not just any Corleone, Michael's own brother. Michael had survived direct confrontation, but Roth didn't need to kill him, not yet. No man, no empire, no dynasty was ever invincible. The key was never in the walls that they built around themselves, but in the cracks within their foundation. And Fredo was that crack. He only needed to weaken him, and so he struck where Michael was vulnerable, at the one place no amount of power or strategy could defend: his own blood. Family was Vito's greatest strength, but Michael's greatest weakness. And Fredo, desperate for validation, aching for recognition, was the perfect opening. Fredo danced on Roth's puppet strings, oblivious to the game he was playing. And Michael had no idea that his own blood was the chisel being used to dismantle his empire. You see, Roth's relationship with Fredo didn't start with this mess. It went back years, back to the Five Families War, back to when Vito Corleone barely survived an assassination attempt and sent Fredo to Vegas to learn the casino business. Fredo was supposed to learn the casino business under Moe Greene, but what he really learned was loyalty to Moe, to Johnny Ola, and to Roth. And to a man like Hyman Roth, a man who played the long game, someone like Fredo was invaluable. Fredo had always been the outsider, overlooked, underestimated. He wanted to be respected, to matter in a world that only saw him as Michael's shadow. That desire made him easy to mold, easy to manipulate. And Roth had been shaping him for years, a man desperate to prove his worth. And men like that, they're easy to mold. So Roth poured into him friendship, opportunity, respect. He made Fredo feel important. He made him feel seen. And now, all that careful work was about to pay off. Michael Corleone had no idea. Not yet, but he would. And when he did, it would already be too late. So why all this hatred towards Michael? Ever since Michael put a bullet through his closest friend, his protege, his business partner, Moe Greene. Michael Corleone had made it personal. He might have convinced himself that it wasn't, but even a blind man can see the truth. Roth was a master of the game of power and the art of war. He was just on a whole nother level. Far more cunning and duplicitous than a Don Barzini, and much more experienced than the ambitious Virgil Sollozzo. I don't think people understand. We honestly need a whole video just to break down the principles of the art of war Roth utilized. A true masterclass in the game of power. For days. It wasn't looking good for Khalid. Offers of a truce seemed quite appealing to his generals. After all, repelling such an army for this long was an achievement in itself. But Khalid recognized this as growing desperation among the Byzantines. He ordered his center forces, composed of veteran infantry, to feign weakness, gradually pulling back in a controlled retreat. Dust rose in thick clouds as the Byzantines, sensing victory, surged forward, their heavy infantry trampling over fallen comrades in their eagerness to break the Muslim lines. What they didn't realize was that they were advancing deeper into a funnel Khalid had designed. With spears leveled and war cries piercing the desert air, they tore through the Byzantine right wing, severing it from the main body of the army. The Byzantines, now compressed in the center, began to realize they had been lured into a kill zone. But it was too late. With both wings collapsed, Khalid ordered his center to halt the retreat and launch a full-scale counterattack. The infantry, reinvigorated, surged forward with renewed off their retreat. The Byzantines were now completely surrounded. Panic set in. The sheer mass of soldiers crammed together created chaos. Horses reared, men trampled one another, and Byzantine officers shouted contradictory orders. Those at the back, realizing the trap, attempted to flee, only to find themselves blocked by steep ravines that bordered the battlefield. Thousands were driven over the cliffs by the relentless onslaught, their screams lost in the roar of the battle. In the center of this maelstrom, General Vahan and his remaining officers desperately tried to rally their troops, but discipline had shattered. The once mighty Byzantine army, the largest force they had assembled in decades, warriors pressed inwards, swords flashing, spears thrusting. Byzantine soldiers, seeing no way out, threw down their weapons and tried to surrender. But in the heat of battle, few were spared. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, over 50,000 Byzantine soldiers lay dead. The once proud army of Emperor Heraclius had been wiped from the battlefield, its survivors scattering into the desert, leaderless and broken. General Vahan barely escaped, his dignity in ruins. The Byzantine dream of holding Syria had collapsed in a single, decisive battle. Khalid ibn al-Walid had executed a perfect double envelopment, a maneuver used by only the greatest generals in history: Hannibal at Cannae, Genghis Khan at the Khalkha River, and Napoleon at Austerlitz. But what's more impressive is that Khalid did it against overwhelming odds. His victory at Yarmouk was not won by brute force, but by strategy. He refused to fight where the enemy was strong, instead striking where they were weak. He didn't allow the Byzantines to dictate the battle. He shaped the battlefield itself. Hence why, even with inferior numbers and even weaponry, he still managed to succeed. Khalid ibn al-Walid, the sword of God, had fought over 40 battles. He did not lose a single one, making him one of only 3 commanders in history to have never lost a battle. How Rome finally outsmarted Hannibal. Hannibal Barca wasn't just a general, he was a force of nature. The Romans had never faced anyone like him. After Cannae in 216 BCE, where he annihilated an army twice his size, the Republic could have surrendered. Many cities in Italy, terrified and awestruck, did just that, defecting to Hannibal. But Rome refused to break. Instead of suing for peace, they went in the opposite direction. They turned the war into an ideological crusade. It wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about ensuring that Rome survived. They made it clear any Roman who considered betraying the Republic would be treated as an enemy. The war was transformed from a military conflict into an existential fight. This hardened Rome's resolve, and it created a brutal, no-compromise war machine. For many years, Rome had relied on its traditional strength, heavy infantry, and head-on battles, and overwhelming numbers against any other enemy. This worked. Against Hannibal, it was suicide. He was too fast, too unpredictable, and too brilliant. His army was made up of diverse, specialized warriors, Numidian cavalry, Iberian swordsmen, and Gaulish berserkers. He fought with fluidity, adapting to every battlefield. Rome, on the other hand, was rigid, and that's why they lost, over and over again. Then came Quintus Fabius Maximus, the man who rewrote Rome's war playbook. He realized the truth. Hannibal couldn't be beaten on the battlefield. So Rome stopped fighting him directly. Instead, they waged a war of exhaustion. No more pitched battles, no more letting Hannibal dictate the terms. Instead, they looked at how Hannibal was able to constantly defeat them and actually started to take decisive action. And so, they burned fields ahead of which were what Hannibal relied on to replenish his army, therefore depriving Hannibal of vital resources which would starve his army. They harassed his supply lines, cutting off reinforcements. They refused to engage, frustrating him at every turn. At first, people mocked Fabius. They called him the Cunctator, the delayer, but his strategy was exactly what they needed. Oh, and he was just getting started. You see, Hannibal wanted Rome to fight him. He wanted them to march into another Cannae and be destroyed. But Rome did the opposite. Instead, they knew attacking him directly again meant certain destruction, and so they did something quite brilliant. They went after his allies. Let me take you back a bit. Hannibal had shattered the Italian Confederation once he crossed the Alps. Many cities and regions in northern and southern Italy had defected to his side, especially after Cannae. But Rome knew that not all of these alliances were strong. Many had only switched sides because they were afraid of Carthage's power, not because they wanted to fight Rome. So instead of confronting Hannibal directly, Rome decided to strike at what is weak. They crushed the weaker defectors first, city by city. They picked off the allies who couldn't sustain themselves without Hannibal's direct protection. But if Hannibal was able to come to their aid, they would retreat, much to his frustration. They then starved out defected cities. They isolated them, cutting off trade and supplies. They forced defections. Seeing all this, many allies realized Hannibal's inability to support them. They switched back to Rome. Hannibal couldn't be everywhere at once. His army was powerful, but he lacked the resources to reinforce every city under his control. Rome took advantage of this, systematically eroding his support, shrinking his army further. One by one, his Italian allies either fell or betrayed him. By 207 BCE, Hannibal was still in Italy, but he was alone. By now, Hannibal was trapped in a slow, losing game. Rome had stripped away his allies, denied him reinforcements, and refused to give him another battlefield masterpiece like Cannae. Rome had done to Hannibal what he had once done to them. So they took the next step. They forced Carthage into a war it could not win. While Hannibal was stuck in Italy, Scipio Africanus led a campaign to Spain, attacking Carthage's strongest economic and military base. The Spanish cities fell one by one. In 206 BCE, Scipio captured Carthago Nova, the heart of Carthage's operations in Spain. With Spain gone, Carthage had nothing left. Scipio wasn't finished. He took the fight directly to Africa, threatening Carthage itself. In desperation, the Carthaginian government recalled Hannibal from Italy. Hannibal had spent 16 years in Italy, undefeated in battle. Now, he was being forced to abandon it. At Zama in 202 BCE, Hannibal and Scipio finally met. It was Cannae in reverse. This time, Rome had superior cavalry thanks to their Numidian allies. They used deception. Scipio studied Hannibal's tactics and mirrored them back. They chose the battlefield, forcing Hannibal to fight on Rome's terms. The result? Hannibal was crushed. Rome didn't just win a battle, they ended Carthage as a military power forever. Rome defeated Hannibal by not fighting him head-on, but by 1. Declaring an existential war. They made it a do-or-die struggle. 2. Adapting to a new kind of warfare. They abandoned rigid tactics and played the long game. 3. Attacking the weak first. They stripped away Hannibal's allies, forcing him into isolation. 4. Controlling the battlefield. They forced Carthage into fights it couldn't win. 5. Striking at the enemy's foundation. They destroyed Carthage's ability to wage war. Hannibal was a tactical genius, but Rome was a strategic empire, and that's why Rome won. A master strategist never meets the enemy's strength head-on. Instead, he identifies weaknesses, exploits vulnerabilities, and attacks where the opponent is least prepared. Direct confrontation is a fool's game. The real path to victory lies in outmaneuvering, outlasting, and outthinking the enemy. In The Godfather, Michael Corleone's war against Hyman Roth was not won through brute force. Roth was powerful, well-connected, and had government on his side. A direct attack would have been suicide. Instead, Michael played a long game, isolating Roth, cutting off his allies, and striking when he was most vulnerable. Rather than taking Roth on in Cuba, where he was protected, Michael waited until Roth fled to America, where he had fewer defenses. There, Michael had him eliminated. This is how history's greatest strategists won wars. Hannibal destroyed Roman legions at Cannae by luring them forward and attacking from behind. But Rome adapted. They refused to fight him directly, instead isolating his allies, cutting off his supplies, and forcing him into a war he could not win. Eventually, Rome took the fight to Carthage itself, forcing Hannibal to abandon Italy. They didn't attack where he was strong, they bled him out where he was weak. Khalid ibn al-Walid, the undefeated general of early Islam, used the same strategy at Yarmouk. Outnumbered, he avoided a direct clash with the mighty Byzantine army. Instead, he baited them forward, stretched them thin, and then crushed them from all sides. The Byzantines fell into his trap, just as Fredo fell into Roth's. A true strategist strikes where the enemy is blind, weak, or distracted. He only needs a few decisive moves to wipe out his enemies. He simply hands them the rope to hang themselves. How to Master the Art of War. The 13 Laws of Victory is the version of Sun Tzu you've been waiting for. It doesn't just explain the old ideas, it shows you exactly how to use them in real life. Each of the 13 laws gives you simple, clear steps to apply ancient war strategies right now. No fluff, no confusion, just straight-up advice you can use to think sharper, move smarter, and stay ahead of the game. It bridges the gap between knowing and doing, giving you the exact mental models, tools, and strategic moves to dominate your battlefield, whatever that may be. If the original felt too vague or hard to apply, this book finally makes it clear, practical, and powerful. Learn how you can win the game and be so far ahead of your competition you won't even be playing the same game.